When you look at the pantheon of quarterbacks that have graced the field with their incredible passing and running ability, you think of Joe Montana, Brett Favre, and Patrick Mahomes. But when you see Eli Manning's name, you pause, reflect, and ask yourself, just how good was Eli Manning? To truly capture and evaluate the value of Eli Manning, it is our duty to look back at his historic rise. The best place to start would be during his college years. Eli Manning spent 4 years at Ole Miss playing in the SEC and had a horrible freshman year. It was truly a disaster given his stats. He played in 6 games, only completing 16 passes from 33 attempts for a pass completion percentage of 48.5%. He didn't even score a touchdown, but had the misfortune of throwing for 1 interception. It's hard to believe given those numbers that Ole Miss would want to keep Eli Manning for another season, but they did, and our guess is that Ole Miss did so because of the legacy of the Manning name. Eli's father Archie was a quarterback for 13 seasons in the NFL and played primarily for the New Orleans Saints. Eli's brother Peyton, well, he needs no introduction, but some reminding that he was a 5-time NFL MVP and regarded as one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play. So it made sense to the head coach of Ole Miss, David Cutcliffe, to give Eli one more chance at the position. In Eli's sophomore year, there was an explosion of his talent splattered all over the field. Manning played for 11 games, throwing 408 times and completing 63.5% of his passes. He threw for just under 3,000 yards, scored 31 touchdowns, and only had 9 interceptions. To put things into perspective, those are roughly the same type of stats that Patrick Mahomes had in his sophomore year. It's greatness matching greatness, and in Eli's case, it was his announcement to the football world that he was born to play this position and to excel in it. And that he did in his senior year, where he played 13 games and threw for 3,600 yards for a pass completion percentage of 62.4%, scoring 29 touchdowns. It was a statement of consistency and reliability, which propelled Manning to become the most sought-after player in the 2004 NFL Draft. Eli was drafted number 1 overall by the San Diego Chargers. Seems simple enough since the Chargers were the worst team in the NFL who needed a quarterback, and Manning was the best one on the board. Except Eli Manning didn't want to play for the Chargers. Before the opening day of the draft was done, it was reported that Manning forced the Chargers' hand by deciding he would not play for the team that drafted him. The Chargers were placed in a difficult position. They had to make a trade and look somewhat good after the transaction. San Diego was saved by the Giants, who sent them Phillip Rivers and 3 draft picks for Eli Manning. No one really knew why Manning didn't want to go to San Diego. Was it because of the sun, the beaches, playing on the West Coast by the Pacific Ocean? Manning did open up in an interview conducted by Kyle Brandt, saying, "It was my decision, having talked with my agent, coaches, general managers, and owners. Going through the draft process, I was just worried about the Chargers organization at the time. I felt it was the right decision, and I had a little pull. I quietly tried to say, hey, please don't draft me, it can be our secret, and they didn't keep the secret part very well." It's not the first time a quarterback of great potential made a fuss about where he wanted to play. Just have a look at the legend John Elway's history. Manning was where he wanted to be, and there was no room for excuses. He had to perform. In his rookie year, Eli started in 7 games where he had a pass completion percentage of 48.2%. Now that is incredibly low, and critics would argue not worthy of a number 1 pick. And speaking of picks, Eli threw for 9 interceptions and scored only 6 touchdowns. Accuracy was his main issue as a freshman at Ole Miss, and the same was apparent in his rookie season in the NFL. The Chargers would be smiling at having avoided what could have been the worst decision in franchise history. But Manning had yet to have a full season to prove his worth. In years 2, 3, and 4, he played in all 16 games and had an average pass completion percentage of 55.5%. An improvement, but still relatively low given the hype surrounding Manning at the time. He also was developing a reputation as someone who throws a lot of interceptions. In those 3 seasons, he had 55 interceptions, which is an average of 18.3 interceptions per season. But thankfully, Eli Manning had more touchdowns, 71, for an average of 23.6 touchdowns per season. But still, those numbers were poor from a number 1 pick, let alone a Manning. By today's standards, Eli would be benched and considered to be a bust. But that all changed in February of 2008 when Eli Manning led the Giants to a Super Bowl victory over the New England Patriots and picked up the Super Bowl MVP honor. The Patriots were favored by 12 points because they were undefeated heading into Super Bowl 42. The game was a low-scoring affair, but the lead did change 3 times in the fourth quarter. Eli Manning threw the game-winning touchdown, much to the shock of the world and Bill Belichick's Patriots. Manning scored 2 touchdowns that game, completing 55.8% of his passes and threw for 255 yards. He, of course, had 1 interception, but it didn't matter. He led his Giants team, who were underdogs, and defeated the Goliath that no one ever expected to lose. It was a monumental win that changed the trajectory of Eli Manning. Following that Super Bowl win, the pass accuracy went up and the interceptions went down. In the following 3 seasons, Manning scored 79 touchdowns, 8 more than the previous 3 seasons. He also only had 49 interceptions, which was a drop from 55. But more importantly, Eli Manning went from a player who had a pass completion percentage of 55.5% to 61.8%. Now that is a significant improvement and sign that confidence plays a huge role. If Manning and the Giants lost that Super Bowl, it could be argued that Eli Manning would have never entered the conversation of who is the greatest quarterback of all time. 3 years from that momentous Super Bowl win, Eli Manning and the Giants returned to the greatest stage of them all to meet the same Patriots led by Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. In the regular season, the Giants won 9 games. They were, however, out of the 4 division winners, the team with the worst record and would have to face a wild card team. What did Eli do stats-wise? He threw for just under 5,000 yards. That's right, 5,000. He had a pass completion percentage of 61%, scored 29 touchdowns, and had 16 interceptions. It was the most passing yards in his NFL career, one of the most accurate in terms of passing, and a season where he had one of the fewest turnovers. Manning took on the Falcons at home by dismantling them. Eli threw for 277 yards, scoring 3 touchdowns, and had a pass completion percentage of 71.9%. That's right, he cracked the 70% barrier, and what's more, Manning had 0 interceptions. It was a blowout win for the Giants, who went on to face the Green Bay Packers in Lambeau Field. Eli Manning scored 3 touchdowns, threw for 330 yards, had a pass completion percentage of 63.3%, and had 1 interception. Doing all that in the snow against a hostile Packer crowd and against the top seed in the NFC speaks volumes of the greatness of Eli Manning. The Giants then traveled to San Francisco, where Eli Manning had one of his worst accuracy games since his first 4 seasons in the NFL. He had a pass completion percentage of 55.5%, but he didn't throw an interception. It's probably what saved the Giants. Manning also threw for 316 yards, scoring 2 touchdowns. They won the game in overtime and were headed to meet the Patriots. Again, the Patriots were favorites in this one, and again they lost to the brilliance of Eli Manning. Manning threw 40 passes for 296 yards, scoring just 1 touchdown with no interceptions for a pass completion percentage of 75%. That's not a mistake, that's greatness. Manning went on to win the Super Bowl MVP for a second time. If we take a look at his career stats in Eli Manning's 16-year career as an NFL quarterback, we will find a player who knew how to win. He scored 366 touchdowns and had 244 interceptions in his career, for which he threw for over 57,000 yards and completed 60.3% of his passes. Those stats would be good enough for any quarterback, but then you add in 2 Super Bowl victories against the best team the NFL has ever seen, and the 2 Super Bowl MVP honors, and you have to respect what Eli Manning has accomplished. And you have to admit, he was pretty darn good. So where would you rate Eli Manning? Just how good was he? Please let us know in the comments down below, but before you go, if you still want to watch awesome NFL content like this, go ahead and watch the next video that will pop up on your screen.